Good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Harikiran Mudlamani, without whose support this evening, this program would have been possible. It is also my great fortune to be sharing the dais with esteemed Mr. Arvind Rao and Harikiran's brother as well. So with that, we come to the topic of the evening, which is Wendy Doniger syndrome. So before that, events like this must happen, and people who are interested in talking about such issues should be invited more and more, because this is fundamentally about what I call an imbalance in public discourse. And that was one of the driving forces behind starting India Facts, which is to basically counter distortions. What has been happening at least since independence, is that people have increasingly, in the public space, have increasingly taken to slandering Hinduism, Indian culture specifically, and what they call a spurious term has come out in circulation as something called an idea of India, which is basically secularism repackaged in different format. So it is to counter such distortions that India Facts has started. It's an online initiative. You can open the page indiafacts.co.in, and we have our principles and objectives there. You can learn more about that. And holding a program like this is pretty courageous, because it is closely linked to the topic of today's discussion, which I'll come to in a bit. And now the other part of today's topic, Wendy Doniger, why it is a syndrome. I will spend a few minutes outlining how it all came about. And then there's an important reason that today's topic is titled after the professor in a US university, in the University of Chicago. That too I will come to in a bit. So now this imbalance in public discourse has occurred because of the nexus of three important pillars of public discourse. One is the media, second is the academia, universities, and the third is the class known as the intellectuals, or broadly speaking, the intelligentsia. Now these three have exerted in any country, in any culture, these three institutions, they exert enormous influence in shaping public opinion, in telling people, what to think, in influencing their minds. Now what has happened in this case is what I will talk about in a fair bit of detail. Now what happened in the case of Wendy Doniger was that she wrote a book called The Hindus, an Alternative History. And that book caused an outrage. It was written somewhere in 2007, if I'm not wrong, 2007, 2008. And it was published, 2009, I'm sorry. And it was published by Penguin. As soon as that happened, a lot of scholars wrote a lot of critiques about that book, pointing out factual, methodological errors in that. But she consistently refused to, even acknowledge those criticism. Sorry. Then what happened was a gentleman called Dinanath Batra. He filed a lawsuit against Penguin, which published her book in India. For 4 years, he took the legal route, and finally Penguin, without going to the court, opted for an out-of-court settlement and agreed to withdraw all existing copies of a book, and whatever were under publication, agreed to destroy them. So this in brief is the entire case. But what happened after Penguin withdrew that was that it was being portrayed as if it was a book ban, as if Dinanath Batra, exerted undue external influence to get it banned, whereas it was not banned. Penguin voluntarily agreed for an out-of-court settlement and said, fine, we are withdrawing it out of our free will. So that is not a ban. Like I said, this is where the imbalance in public discourse lies. A voluntary withdrawal of a book is being portrayed as if it is an act of banning. So that brings us to 3 points. 1, this outrage, so-called outrage over the book withdrawal is a manufactured outrage. 2, and this so-called outrage is just the latest instance of a phenomenon that dates back to at least 40 years. 3, it is an attempt by an extremely powerful and well-entrenched class which insists insisting to preserve its hegemony over public discourse. So at the heart of this entire controversy lie these 3 points. And these 3 are closely and inextricably, inseparably related to each other. Now, before we get to the details, let us see what the Wendy Doniger issue is not about. 1, it is not a book ban, as I earlier said. And 2, more importantly, it is not an issue of free speech, because this is also being written in the media and TV channels. Those interviewing Dinanath Batra, for example, I think NDTV did a show where he was pretty much painted as a villain there, as someone who's an opponent of free speech. So these 2 points are what the Wendy Doniger issue is not about. But yet the outrage and the discourse over this issue packages it as a ban and a threat to free speech, and this is precisely why I called it a manufactured outrage. The outrage is not real, it is manufactured, it is painted as something that it is not. And in other words, this issue, it seeks to retain and perpetuate the prevailing imbalance in public discourse that I spoke about. And this imbalance also accords the right to free speech as well as the right to criticism only to one class of people, while denying the same right to other class of people. In fact, things have come to such a pass that this class of people actually have come to define what free speech itself. I don't know how many of you have read George Orwell's 1984, where it's almost become an article of faith now, calling something an Orwellian word, which simply means to say that some people sitting at the top of the political or intellectual hierarchy decide and lay down rules for what the rest of the population should think. So this is what has been happening at least for like 40 years, and all in the name of free speech. And now free speech, true and honest free speech in public discourse requires a level playing field. Like, you can't say that it is like saying it's like India playing cricket with say US. The playing field is not level there, and that is pretty much what has happened here. And this state of affairs is the outcome of a conscious cultivation of political patronage and the capture of crucial key public institutions. For example, I spoke on a related topic in Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, which is the most representative example of this phenomenon of capturing institutions of public discourse. Now let's see how this imbalance plays out, for example, in the Wendy Doniger issue. Now, apart from manufactured outrage, there is an important aspect in this case which has been buried: her record of scholarship. Now, Wendy Doniger is known as a foremost scholar, if not an expert in Hinduism and India and Sanskrit studies and that kind of Indology, to put it in a broader perspective. She is known as a recognized authority in the US and maybe all over the world as well, to a great extent, as an authority on Indology. Now this record has been consistently critiqued, like I mentioned in the opening of my speech. This record has been consistently critiqued by numerous scholars across the globe who are maybe as learned or even better learned and better equipped than Wendy herself. And these include such stalwarts like Swami Tyagananda, who wrote an excellent critique of Jeffrey Kripal's book on Ramakrishna, where Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. It's called Kali's Child. The sum and substance of that book is that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was a pervert who had a sexual relationship with Swami Vivekananda. So he brings in all sorts of theories to somehow prove that. So this was rebutted very well by Swami Tyagananda of Ramakrishna Ashram. And then you had Rajiv Malhotra, who actually opened, brought notice to this kind of things happening in the US academia. And then you had Professor S.N. Balagangadhara, then Professor Emeritus Madan Lal Goel. Now, it is basically Wendy's word against them, or is it their collective words against her? How is it? So this is what I meant when I said that the playing field is not level, where she can, write this kind of thing and pretty much try and get away with it, while their voices are buried. Now the other thing, one of the other arguments that was put forth was that why did Dinanath Batra have to, take the legal route? Why can't Hindus write critiques? Like if they have a problem with Wendy Doniger's books, why don't they write a critique? Like I just mentioned, all these people have already done that, and that nobody talks about. That critique is buried. It's only when it hurts your foot that they suddenly get up and wake up and start screaming. And now, among other things, their critique uniformly bring out several problem areas in Wendy Doniger's scholarship, several key features that distinguish her so-called scholarship. Number one, she frequently mistranslates Sanskrit words. Just to give a couple of examples, for Dasharatha, she calls Dasharatha a kama saktaha, and she gives the meaning of kama sakta as someone who is addicted to sex, whereas that is not the case. There's no meaning of addiction to sex coming out of kama sakta. Second, using God knows what theories she has in mind, she equates Ganesha's trunk as a penis, and then she calls Shiva as an erotic ascetic. Now this kind of thing is somehow supposed to be treated as scholarship. And then second, she uses discredited psychoanalytical theories to study Hindu texts and scriptures, whereas Hindus themselves have prescribed the exact and rather elaborate methods on how to interpret them. For example, you have your Vedangas, your Nirukta, etc. She conveniently ignores all of them, but uses them to bring out a sexual meaning or whatever other preconceived meaning she wants to deliver. Third, she eroticizes almost every aspect of Hinduism. It seems that Wendy Doniger cannot help herself from seeing sex everywhere, in everything, even where it doesn't exist. Now, for example, give a small example. In one of her books, she says that for the information on the science and art of temple building, Wendy Doniger asks us to refer to the Kama Sutra. Fourth, she falsifies the history of medieval Islamic rule in India, and she relies as evidence, she relies on discredited historians like Romila Thapar, D.N. Jha, D.D. Kosambi, and so on. Fifth, and she has spawned and continues to support and defend scholars like herself. Chief among them are Paul Cotright, who wrote that book on Ganesha, Sarah Caldwell, Jeffrey Kripal, and these are people Rajiv Malhotra called Wendy's children. Wendy has consistently refused to engage with scholars in debate about her work. No matter however solid the credentials of such scholars, she simply brands them all as Hindutva fanatics who are unfairly targeting her. Now this has parallels in the Indian academia as well, of shoddy scholarship, of plagiarism, of distortion, and when such deceptive scholarship is called out by people, it's pointed out by people, the labeling and the name calling begins. Differing, opposing, or even alternate views are branded as communal, reactionary, and whatever other labels, and dissent is ruthlessly suppressed. In India, this has been occurring for at least 4 decades, like I mentioned, and for more information, there is no better book than Arun Shoury's Eminent Historians, their technology, their line, and their fraud. So this is pretty much like a mirror of of the things happening in India as well as in the US academia. Also, there's a reason Wendy is so powerful. The religious studies in US is controlled by a umbrella organization called the AAR, or American Academy of Religions. Now, this institution gives policy advice on how religion should be taught, what textbooks should be prescribed to the government. And Wendy Doniger has been heading that for I don't know how many years. Plus, she's also a tenured professor in the University of Chicago, which means to say that, even Indian students or students there wanting to do a degree in humanities and religion and Indology, they have to toe her line. Otherwise, they won't get their PhDs or their degrees. So this is how they become what I call the gatekeepers of discourse on Indology. The other important thing is that in the university system of the US, Islam, for example, is taught by a Islamic scholar, by a Muslim. Christianity is taught by a rector or an expert, a scholar, theologian of Christianity. It is only in case of Hinduism that non-Hindus are sitting there and teaching Hinduism. Now, and there's one more important point to ponder here. This kind of shoddy scholarship is not tolerated in science departments anywhere in the world, in any university in the world. So how and why did it occur in the humanities? The short answer is that learning and scholarship have been sacrificed at the altar of politics. And decades of such politically motivated scholarship has created at least 3 generations of scholars, writers, activists, journalists who take extreme pride in denigrating the heritage and traditions of their own ancestors. A more fundamental problem is that as a result of all this, Hindus have been told who they are by outsiders. More importantly, by outsiders who are hostile to Hinduism. And for about 200 years, if this happens, it creates a huge population of self-hating Hindus, and that is what the Britishers did as part of their colonial deracination project, and that is what the likes of Wendy Doniger are continuing, as Shri Arvind Rao just rightly pointed out. When the British came in, they didn't come in initially as colonialists. They came in as businessmen offering traders. They came in as traders offering rich tributes to kings just so that, help us do some trading. Your land is rich, we'll do some trading, please help us. They came as supplicants, basically. Barely in 200 years, they suddenly woke up one day and realized that, these people are brown skinned, they're inferior. Ever since they've been teaching Hinduism to Hindus. And another interesting point Arvind Rao ji mentioned was how these Western scholars like Witzel, Steve Farmer, etc. come to our Vedic scholars in, say, mutts or even remote villages, and they go back. They spend years here to learn Sanskrit and our traditional Vedic learning, They go back and they write all kinds of books. They don't even as much as acknowledge the scholars from whom they have learned. They don't do that. Instead, what they say is that they have a term for our Pandits. They are called native informants. I don't know, what that means is probably that we are like lab specimens maybe. And so this class of scholars, they reserve the right to critique other scholars' work, but they deny the same right to those critiquing their work. And that explains the shrill support for Wendy Doniger, not only in the US, but unsurprisingly in India. And almost all accounts, book reviews, etc., of you see of Wendy Doniger's book in the mainstream reviews, maybe in the blurb of a thing or of a book, or in the jacket cover, front jacket, they're all positive. It is simply because Wendy Doniger writes a glowing review of, say, Paul Courtwright's book. Paul Courtwright writes a glowing paragraph about how great Doniger's book is, and then he will cite her work in his scholarly work. So this is a small, nice and cozy club of incestuous club that will not mention honest critique. Nobody is saying you just give out a negative review for the sake of it. But if you claim to be an honest scholar, an upright scholar, then open up your book to critical scrutiny. So that is not happening. And neither is the call for free speech in this case honest by the people who are outraged of Wendy Doniger's book being withdrawn. It is not honest. And for at least 5 decades, this class has the experience of suppressing free speech. I'll give few examples. They have suppressed free speech, and they have not only supported bans, book bans and movie bans. I'll give a small list. Until at least the mid 80s, or no, actually early 90s, until the early 90s at least, any and every book critical of the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty was banned in India. And I'll give a short list here. There's a book called Rangila Rasool, which was a critical look at Prophet Muhammad's life. The book was banned and the author was stabbed to death. And like I said, almost all books critical of Nehru dynasty. V.S. Naipaul's Area of Darkness, of course the famous satanic verses, and which regrettably India was the first country to ban it. Again, Salman Rushdie's other famous book called The Moor's Last Sigh. That book was banned because it has a character in the book whose dog is named Jawaharlal. Then there's a book called Calcutta Quran Petition. The book was banned, copies were burned, author was chased out. Then there's another book called Understanding Islam Through Hadith. And recently there's this book called The Red Sari, which is a fictional account based on Sonia Gandhi's life. Alright, so now these people who have supported these bans are now yelling murder because Penguin accepted to withdraw the book voluntarily. There lies the hypocrisy. 1. 2. And these bans, when they had political patronage and power, they were enforced primarily in 2 ways. 1, through sheer political muscle. During the 70s, when the communists had sided with Indira Gandhi, when they had a field day back then. And then the threat of legal action, which is precisely now that Dinanath Batra has taken the matter to court, he's turned the tables on them. This is what they have been doing for 4 decades now. And then further, when say Taslima Nasreen's books were banned and she was physically attacked here in Hyderabad itself, she was physically attacked, these folks did not stand up for her. Nobody in the media, no self-proclaimed supporter of free speech and liberal, nobody ever talks in favor of her. They maintain a studied silence. So this class, in the end, this class has no moral authority to question or condemn Dinanath Batra, who simply took a leaf out of their own book. And then they're also attacking Penguin, which doesn't stand on any grounds, because, I mean, is it a crime to use the law of the land? Which is what Dinanath Batra has done. Now, but more importantly, this manufactured outrage also reveals their anxiety at losing their established dominance, at losing the imbalance that is slipping away from their hands, and so all these kinds of desperate attempts to clutch on to it at any cost. Now, a truly open discourse permits all views, good, bad, ugly, hateful, all views. And the idea is to arrive at the truth through reasoning and knowledge alone, and not through any other dishonest means or, cloak in the dagger approach. Now, here's when these principles, which I just outlined now, when these principles are substituted with organized intellectual bullying, as happened here, scholars become party line mouthpieces, and their students become the sheep. And like a famous political commentator in the US, Ian Moreau, said, the logical end of this is that a nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. And with that, I come to the end of this talk, and I once again thank Shri Arvind Rao ji, Hari Kiran, who is not here unfortunately, Mr. Ravi, and thank you again. I'll take the questions.
So why did you write a book from the same book, quoting all these facts?
Which one?
Why did you write a book? Wendy Doniger, the counter, and what else you wrote? You give a counter and let us written.
That has already happened. A lot of people, a lot of scholars I just quoted, they have written elaborate critiques on her work.
Yeah.
It's already happened.
Yeah, but we can print a book and distribute it.
Yeah, all that remains to be done is to distribute it, yes. Yeah.
If you write a book, we will print.
Sure. Your question?
Line of action or anything you have in mind so that you can proceed with this movement and bring awareness to the people. It's in a large scale. Is there anything going on?
Yeah, in a small way, that's pretty much what we're doing at India Facts. And I think one of the first steps is to create awareness, because the situation today has significantly improved compared to when we started looking at these issues some 14 years back. There's a lot more awareness today as compared to what was there back then.
India has a history of, getting aware when they are punched back. They are like punching bags.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
What are the issues you are looking at in the India Facts? Because you said you're looking at distortions. So what are the kind of distortions you're taking up? That was my first question. The second one, you said discredited historians, Ramnath Thapar and D.N. Jha. On what basis are they discredited?
Like I said, I referred you to Arun Chaudhry's book.
What are the distortions that you're taking up?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your first question. So, distortions at every level, maybe religious, our scriptures, the Vedas, cultural, historical, at multiple levels. Wherever, something has been distorted, we will counter it.
Hello. Yeah. my question is, how is Indian scholars, I mean the genuine scholars of our religion and country, are countering the conversion of people, like in the intellectual level, what you are saying is very good and everything is acceptable. But in the middle class and lower class, they are putting, I mean, they are introducing the methods like till now in any Christian, I mean any church, there is no practice of Ratha, like a practice of Ratha and all. But in India, they hold Rathotsav for marriage and they give Aarti in that this one churches, and they make like they are giving prasadam, and now they have already started Jesus Veda and Jesus Bharatanatyam, and they are digesting our religion in such a way that we don't recognize that whether it is our religion or whether they are also part of our religion, because and also that religious leaders in our country also, they are not differentiating the difference between their religion and our religion. They are saying that all God lead to one this one. We are accepting that Jesus is also God and ours is also God. Like the famous joke they make is, in common way, we have 3.4 crores of God. What is wrong with adding another God like Jesus and Allah? Like this, they are not getting educated with in the middle class and lower class. How you are trying to engage with those people?
A good question, and unfortunately, political power, the way the political system is configured, you have a former chief minister here who actively patronized conversions, and there's nothing much ordinary people can do about that. One of the first things that one needs to do to stop these and counter these conversions is to stop their funding.
I have a question. Remember sometime in 97, 98.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sometime in 97, 98, Stanley Woolpert had written something about Nehru, and what had the ensuing storm actually made me believe that it seems that mere mortals like us are more important than the gods of Hinduism, because it seems it has become intellectually fashionable for the so-called secularists to bolster their secularism or secular credentials by bashing Hindus and Hinduism. What I wanted to know was, I think what is required more than anything else today is a very concerted effort to bring about our point of view. And I do not mean, I am a card-carrying secularist, but that doesn't mean that anybody can run down my religion. My question is, are there any efforts being made to kind of present a very strengthened effort to kind of present?
Yeah, lots of efforts are being made, except that they are happening in isolation, they are being scattered. And one such effort to institutionalize something like this was just mooted by Arvind Raoji. And he said, we need to bridge this gap between traditional learning and what is taught in the West, their theories. You have to understand them first before you can even counter them. So that has to happen at a organized level and in large enough numbers.
When Taslima was attacked at press club here, a senior editor, Mr. B.K. Prasad, was there on the dais, and Mr. Vinaya, a senior journalist, also was there. It was roundly condemned by the media. And one Siyasat, a paper, a moderate Urdu daily, has written an editorial saying that 40 minute copy hai. So to do something, 40 minutes enough, they could not do anything, organize this. Which means they should have beaten her up and changed their habit. That also was roundly condemned. We had a seminar at the press club. We expressed our outrage, and we all wrote editorials also. This is only to set the record straight.
Thanks.
Excuse me.
Is the editor of one newspaper and also owner of that HMTV. HMTV is the CEO of HMTV and also editor of Once India.
Okay.
Sri Ram Chandra, and also a writer.
So my point was more on those who call themselves as free speech champions and secularists. They did not stand up for her. I'm not cherry picking, but in the larger scheme of things, nobody stood up for her.
Excuse me, sir. I've been a regular reader of your websites, Sandeep Web and India Facts since 4-5 months. I need a clarification on an article I have read yesterday. That RSS have been BJP workers had a role in 1984 riots in Delhi. How do you?
I don't think this is the right forum to answer that.
You told that first we should understand the Western mind so that we can counter it. So what I understood about them is, in our arts, whatever, in anything, the Indian civilization, in either arts, like music, sculpture, we more focus on devotion to God or spirituality. But whereas the Western civilization, and at least in the 21st century, they focus in the music, in their popular culture, they focus more on sex. Okay. So that's the reason why I think they see everything in that aspect, through the angle of sex.
Possible. I mean, I really didn't get your question.
Yeah, I'm telling that
The perspective of
their perspective is always, not always, most of the times, it's surrounded around sex. So that's the reason whatever they see. See, if they see Sivalingam, they don't get any other thing. They don't get the positive energy or they don't see it as a symbol of God. They just see the penis. So they have a narrow mind. Their perspective is narrow to the extent of the sex. And that sells there. Unfortunately, it's selling even in India now. You show sex in anything and that becomes the talk of the town and people will take interest in that and they do. They go and read those books. So if Wendy Doniger does the same thing, a lot of people will read her books.
Impossible.
So first of all, we have to we have to change that. We should bring it a point that that should be counted first. That's my opinion.
Okay.
more sex-oriented Western perspective is there.
That's the thing, and they have a lot of inferior complex on them. See, they feel that they are superior, that they are a superior race. And these are the two reasons what I believe that we have this. And when you told that we have to understand their psyche so that we can counter. So this is my opinion. What I've understood about them is they see more in a perspective of sex. Number one, they have a superiority complex for us.
Okay.
Well,
See, we all agree that
it's not exactly a question to.
okay, so we all agree that awareness makes difference. Do you have any site which authentically says about any of this scripture we have, like starting from Mera to Upanishad? Such thing would really be very helpful. I don't know if there is such thing.
But there are lots of websites like that, actually. Yeah. There's Hindu Wisdom, there's Bharata Bharati, lots of sites like that.
Well, Hinduism has been under bombardment for centuries. There were successful and unsuccessful gods about it. After independence, at the time of independence, we had a mental wreck, physical, financial, psychological wreck. In 1700 AD, India was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And at the time of our independence, our wealth came down from 23% of the world income to 3%. We were psychologically destroyed. At that point of time when we got independence, we were struggling to stand on our feet. We have been told for decades and centuries that we are fools and the way to live is only the way that is followed by the West. This is the fundamental cause. And now today, in the last half a century or more, we have, instead of developing India, the first 25 years after independence, we Everybody was very sincere. The politician, the businessman, the scientist, everybody was sincere. Then came a radical change in that. And then there were no controls over our talk to action. Now, do you know that at this point of time, you started your association around 14 years ago. I started exactly about 14 years ago an association called Earth System Sciences Awareness and Research Association, popularly known as Ishwara. We have organized so far about 59 lectures, trying to educate that there is a great Indian ancient science which cannot be neglected, and particularly in the present context of environmental degradation and economic melt, ours is the only way to live correctly, and we can be world leaders in that. Now, I just came at the closing time of Dr. Arvindra's lecture. He said one thing very correctly: we require scholarship. You tell me, thousands of people are going to US from India. How many of them carrying one Bhagavad Gita with them? What they know about Hinduism? How many people are talking about defending Hinduism, and how many of them are Hindu in nature, spiritually, or whatever other conceptually? So this is a fundamental problem. When your reaction is right, this meeting is right, and we don't have to lose hope. Hinduism is imperishable.
Thank you.
Just because we feel it is Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu, Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu. Shanno Astu Vipade, Shan Chatuspade. That is the ultimate. So don't worry about what somebody else said about Hinduism. Let us set right the mental awareness of the intellectuals of Hindus in India, and everything will be solved. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry for the longer speech.
No, thanks. Yeah, question.
Okay, thank you for your beautiful words. So all the veteran years, I have not studied any of the Vedas, or I am just a simple common man. What I want to know is, why will a Hindu or why will an Indian study history? When it's taught in the school, by the history what we read, we feel inferior. You know, we are always told only in one time or two time we will tell India was affluent. After that you will always see somebody ruling us. So mindset of the students, if it starts like that, until they realize one day, like every country has ups and downs, you won't be able to feel superior. No need to feel superior until we can't go this inferiority complex. So I feel our Indian government is not trying to show its country to the world in a proper manner, and I think this is the root cause, because the children are the future. So if their mind is if we add a seed of doubt in their mind, then we are going to a place of no way.
Yeah, well, that project of presenting a distorted version of Indian history is by design, like I said.
My question is that Donnie being a very maybe considered in most of the circles as a proper researcher, historian, or an Indologist. Now the criticism for her work is not very new. People like you are there since her first work came out. Is it a problem that since people who criticize are not on the same standing in scholarly terms, is that she is getting more room and she is able to produce more work again and again on the same lines? Second, I have two more questions.
Let me answer this first. So, like I already said, it's not about relative merits of scholarship. People who are far better scholars than Doniger, and nobody has a monopoly over knowledge or scholarship. So the problem here lies in what I just said as an imbalance in public discourse. The playing field is not level.
Yes, because as I see it, her work will get published by the top tier of publication and gets more.
Yes, precisely because of
more
the reason I
money,
mentioned.
more publicity, and the criticism is getting published by the lower tier. So it's not getting out. I mean, I have been into interactions with respect to this book. A lot of my friends say if people are so agitated, why is not a proper scholarly criticism coming out? Saying it's there, but when I refer those books to people, they just look at the publication. They say we do not know what publication is. They outrightly there is a rejection of work saying that this is not good enough. Secondly, do you think a more militant opposition is the needed today?
Militant opposition in the field of
Militant
scholarship?
Not in scholarship, because since scholarship is not able to give a proper bulwark against such work coming out, and Tani getting old now, she is like very old now, but her students.
See, it is not Wendy Doniger. She is just a syndrome, like I said. She is just a representative of a larger disease.
So, what do you see as the medicine for this? What do you see as a medicine for this?
Like he mentioned and like I mentioned in my talk, you have to develop your own narrative, which not only challenges that, but which is authentic in its own right and which can stand on its own right.
Okay, and the last question. The Western scholars in recent years, in the past 40, 60 years, are writing a lot, producing a lot about Hindus and Hinduism, and most of them are talking on the sexual openness which they believe was there at one point of time. Some of them talk positively on that point, some of them talk in a very negative way on that point. I see people like us, people like you, when they counter that, they are slightly defensive about the sexual aspects. So is it proper? I mean, like we take it in a very negative way when any sexual issue comes up in terms of deities, in terms of symbols. So is it proper, or maybe we should give it a second look?
Well, the habit of reading extensive, sex into everything, whether it be in their own mythology or be it their study of our culture. The problem is not with the sexual meaning. The problem is the distortion that happens. That is what we are against.
My question is, when we fight this Wendy syndrome, why the forces like similar forces like Ramakrishna Math, which also fight this in their own way, and Rajiv Malhotra or some other in southern India, or any part of scholarly work who follows them, come united and put pressure on the organization or authority which is dealing with that books and publications. Why they don't get united? Because you see that Dinanath Batra fought alone. His Shiksha Bachao alone, he fought alone. And then some media recognized that fight, and then they got attention of that all this ulapla happened. But why the fight is not getting united? That when the book comes out, there should be united force that this is not right. You are not supposed to represent our religion in this way, like that. You are representing wrong. They should unitedly say that. But it is not happening in our country. Even the force fighting for us also not getting united. What's the reason of this one?
Well, this is a historic problem with Hindus. They were not united. Face the facts.
I have another answer for that question.
Somebody, Professor Garu. Professor Balakrishna.
Okay.
When people are discussing an issue at a higher level, and then some people are discussing the same issue at a lower level, the quality of thought process will be very different. Fundamentally, in India, we believe in dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And in US, they believe only in artha and kama. How can you go on arguing with such people? When your belief itself is different, when your basis itself is like different, your life's goal itself is different, your attitude is different, your concept of life, the society, everything is different. And whereas there it is totally different from ours, with emphasis only on artha and kama. And this artha and kama attracts youngsters so much that post-independence India, which was starving, immediately caught hold of that. And please don't be worried, it is only a phase in a long history of India. From 1947 up to now, we have passed how many years? About 60 plus. So this is only a transition. People will be getting more and more aware of the handicaps of following a truly westernized civilization, westernized culture, and westernized science even. Science also is going to make a tremendous change. Asian science has to be different from that of that. India's population density is about 370 per square kilometer, whereas America's is only 40 per square kilometer. And we are doing everything they are doing. We are trying to prove that we are equal and competent as them. And foolishly enough, our government is promoting all those things. Now, and for your question, I am telling you, it is not that if somebody is talking some nonsense, Sankaram Ramakrishna Madan will not come and clarify his doubt immediately. He will leave it for his ignorance to learn by himself. You understand? So don't think all these Pitadipatis are fools and they are not participating in this lowly discussion. That is the fundamental reason. Intellectuals do not indulge in mudslinging. So things will take place of itself. After all, what Dr. Arvindra is very right. Let us increase our scholarship. That is required. How many of us have read this? In these books you tell? Nobody. And how many of us know Sanskrit? Almost very few maybe. So how can you contest her? She is a scholar of her sorts. Definitely she is a scholar. And she may be, for example, we have Charvaka Darshan, isn't it? Which condemns everything. So please don't be agitated. It is only by our own maturity we will come to know about answers for all these questions. Thank you so much.
We have to increase our scholarship, and there have to be efforts to improve social sciences. As in, people should be interested in taking up the social sciences. If you do an art subject, you are considered a done.
Madam, one thing,
Yeah,
you are talking about social sciences. Even sciences are going to hell.
No.
Only IT is ruling.
Yeah, that's
What are you talking about social sciences? Who bothers?
No, but if you have to do all this, you get into this stream.
Yes, when you burn your fingers, you will know. When something happens in your own house, your son and grandson does it, then you will know. There are no science, social sciences, it's all gone. It is all. I understand your anxiety, that is true.
Even if you do it, if a person does it.
Social sciences is not a subject to be taught in the universities and colleges. Social science has to be taught by the parents in the house. If they don't do their job and expect colleges to teach them, it is nothing but stupidity.
Now, if you take up a subject like history, they
Yeah.
say, they think you come from some other planet.
Yes, madam. People keep on writing. People keep on writing. See. So how many you can condemn, you tell me? How many people you can stop talking?
No, focus should also be towards the.
Yes, madam. In fact, what you said is right. I tell you. You know why today this state of affairs has come like this? Religion is a moderator for any human being. And what we did with religion, we threw it out. I feel even today, every week there should be 2-3 classes on religion. If the boy is Muslim, let him send to a Muslim religious class. If it is Hindu, let him go to that one. If it is Christian, let him go to
Professor
that.
Ramakrishna.
Teach them, yeah. I'm only responding. Sorry for this.
No,
I'm only
welcome, but then the speaker.
Yeah, because
he will take
So
one more
you
question.
can contact me directly. Thank you so much.
Professor Ramakrishna is having an organization, as he said. His organization is called ESWARA, Earth Systems,
Sciences.
Earth Sciences.
Earth System Sciences Awareness and
Science,
Research Association.
yeah. Lot many scholars are invited, and almost every month they have got a lecture. That is somewhere near CCMB.
No. They happen all over.
All over. Mostly in that area.
They are meant for educating the
Yes.
educated people. National scientists, in national laboratories, universities.
His target group are say IT people, scientists, lecturers, and people something like that. Now, 2 more questions are welcomed by the speaker.
Excuse me, sir. I have read your blog on rape of our epics. Don't you think usually the case with our feminists is they often quote things out of context to suit their conveniences? For example, the attack on Shurpanaka by Lakshmana. I think it was fair. It wasn't entirely wrong because he was only trying to protect his sister-in-law, that is Sita. But that's actually shown as an attack on a woman.
I mean, where's your question? Yes, what you're saying is right.
Yeah.
But what is your question?
No, I'm saying this is a case in almost every feminine writings of.
Yes, precisely because it is very rewarding to write like that.
Yeah.
There are 2 things here. One is they've seriously internalized this distorted version, or if they know the actual Ramayana and they know what that Shurpanaka, what she's done is wrong, and they still distort it and write it in that fashion, then they're lying. There's no third way.
Yeah. Another thing, I think atheism is unsustainable in India because most of them try to cling on to some identity which has some religion. For example, most of the Tamil atheists consider Ravana to be a hero, even though they don't believe in gods.
Yes, this came about during the heights of the Tamil language chauvinism, where
And it still continues to
yeah.
exist.
So finally, there's one Tamil writer who changed his name to Ravanan or something, and then somebody pointed out that look, all your Dravidian, so-called Dravidian guys, don't call yourself Ravanan because Ravana was a Brahmin. So that's when they stopped that.
And I think even for Muslims, it's tough to call themselves as atheists, I feel. I mean, they somehow.
Sorry, what?
I feel even Muslims find it difficult to practice atheism in pure form, I think. For example, Javed Akhtar.
Well, atheist, it's straightforward in the scripture. I mean, the punishment for atheism is death.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Last question.
Just now I want to ask a query. Are Western world afraid of our Hindu religion because we have answer for everything? Whatever their question is there, like about Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. We have answer for everything, and they find very much less answer when they go through their religion. They don't have every answer for every question. And if someone questions their religion, they call it as blasphemy or something like against to the God religion. But in India or in our culture and religion, we accept the question, we try to answer them in a suitable way. Is that they are afraid that these guys have every answer for in this religion they have every answer for every question, and they may overtake us because in US 1 in 3 people practices yoga and meditation, and now they are practicing pranayama also. Like that, are they afraid of our religion and practices?
Could be one of the factors. Fear could be one of the factors, but largely I think the attack against Hinduism that is coming both from within and from the West is owes to the failure of Hindus themselves. Now, if you look at how the West's contact with Hinduism, especially in the colonial era, came, the earliest writings were what you can call favorable to, or favorable is not the right word. They were positive. Like they had more. They approached Hinduism with a more open mind. And when the colonial doctrine and the racism theory became more prominent, everything associated with non-white people was somehow condemnable, somehow inferior. And then post-independence, what happened was something happened that was unprecedented, that was not seen till the Britishers came in, which was the fact that Hindus became ashamed of their own religion. So which is why I said that, they created a few generations of self-hating Hindus. So when we hate ourselves just to seek the approval of a third person, they will abuse us even more. And they'll go behind us, they'll laugh behind our backs. So this is what is happening. This is just last question.
It's not a question, it's a comment basically.
Okay, you can take it with me offline then.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.